Look at this Python code for 5 seconds and tell me what's wrong with it. Did you figure it out? Probably not, because the code looks so normal. It's literally just a list of numbers, and we go through that list. And if the number is divisible by 2, so if the number is even, then we remove that number from the list. But you'll see that when we run this, it actually includes 8 in the list for some reason, even though I think we all know that 8 is an even number. So why does this happen? Well, I'm going to show you 5 more mistakes that every beginner makes when they're learning Python, and at the end, we'll reveal how to fix this mistake. Okay, so let's check out the first beginner mistake that everyone makes. So as you can see here, what we want to do is we just want to print step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5 in order with 1 second interval in between them. But you'll see that when we run this, it just waits 5 seconds and then it prints out everything in one go. We don't want that. We want it to do this, then wait a second, then this, then wait a second, and on and on. So how do we change this? Take a second to think about this, but this is how we do it. All you need to add right here is an extra argument that says flush and just set that equal to true. That basically just means now that when we run it, it will do step 0, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and step 5 with a 1 second interval in between. Okay, so now let's check out this second mistake. And in this one, you'll see that we have a dictionary called scores. And in this dictionary, we have a couple of names that are the keys, and each key corresponds to a value, which is the score that that person got. So all this code is doing is using a for loop to go through this dictionary, and if the score that that person got is less than 7, it will delete that pair, the person and the score, from this dictionary. But you'll see that if we run this, it actually gives us an error that says runtime error, dictionary change size during duration. And this is because Python doesn't like when you change the size of a dictionary during the runtime of the code. So instead, what we can do is use the list function to turn this dictionary into a list, because Python is fine with list changing size during the runtime. And then we just have the same code. We'll check if the score that corresponds to that name is less than 7, and if it is, we will delete it from the list. And you'll see that this works perfectly fine. Okay, now this one is definitely the most common mistake that beginners make in Python, but it looks really simple. It's literally just using the input function to ask the user to enter their age, and then storing that number inside of a variable called age. And then if that age is greater than 18, it will print adult. But you'll see that if we run this and put in any number, 3, it'll give us an error. If we put in a number that's over 18, like 30, it will still give us an error. So let's look at this error. The error says type error, greater than symbol not supported between instances of str and int. And so breaking this down, this basically just means that you're not able to compare a string to an integer, which makes sense, right? Like you can't do is hello greater than 3 because it just doesn't make sense. But in this case, we did actually put in numbers. Why isn't able to compare them? Well, in Python, every single thing is actually a data type, and Python is not smart enough to be able to say, oh, this string is the number 5, let's just turn it into an integer. We have to manually tell it to turn it into an integer. So all we need to add here is one line that says age is equal to int of age, and this int function just turns that string into an integer. So now you'll see that if we run this and we enter our age, it will work perfectly. But there's actually a cleaner way to do this in just one line. Instead of putting that on a separate line, we can wrap this entire input function with an int function. And if we run this and try something like the number 30, you'll see that it works perfectly. Okay, now this one's pretty interesting because it explores the runtime of the program, how long the code takes to execute. So let's look at the code. We have an empty string called result, and we have a for loop that goes through every single word in this list 10,000 times and concatenates that word to this empty string result. And you'll see that if we try to run this, it works pretty well. Takes around half a second. But if we want to raise this number up to something like 200,000, it takes a pretty long time. Okay, I can tell you that took around 30 seconds. And imagine if we bump this number up to like 500,000 or even 1 million, that would take a very long time. So let's look at how you would fix this code and make it actually run faster. The trick is using something called the join method. So the join method is exactly what you think it is. It basically takes in a list and every single string in that list, it joins them together into one single string. And this is usually used for turning a single list into a string, but for our purposes, we can actually use the multiply operator and multiply this list by 200,000. So it does the exact same thing as the previous one. It has 200,000 copies of this list, and the dot join method is just going to join all these strings together. And this doesn't seem like it would be faster, but this dot join method is extremely efficient. And you'll see that with this 200,000 number, if we run this, it goes from 30 seconds to barely even a second. Okay, now this mistake just doesn't make sense. It's not even a beginner mistake, it's more like a Python mistake. But let's look at the code. All we have is total equals 0.1 plus 0.2, and we're gonna print whether total is equal to 0.3. So we're literally just checking if 0.1 plus 0.2 is equal to 0.3, like 5th grader math. And if we run this, you'll see it says false. But I think we can all agree that it should print true. So what is the total actually? What does Python think 0.1 plus 0.2 is? It thinks that it's 0.3, 0, 0, 0, a bunch of zeros, and then a 4 for some reason. Now, why does this happen? We need to go back to how computers work. Computers store numbers in binary, just zeros and ones. It doesn't actually store 0.1. Instead, it'll store something like 0.1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, and then another one. Now, why does this happen? I'm not going to go into the nuance of it, but basically it's because binary is just not built to handle decimals. So it'll turn 0.1 into that, and it's going to turn 0.2 into 0.2, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, a bunch of zeros, and then maybe a 3. And that's why it ends up totaling to 0.3, 0, 0, 0, and then a 4. And that tiny difference means that it's not equal to the actual correct answer. So how do we fix this? The solution is pretty messy, but it's to use a library called math, and math has a lot of useful functions in it, but the one for our purposes is going to be the isClose function. I mean, it's exactly what it sounds like. It just compares two numbers and checks if they're close to each other. So in this case, 0.3000004 is pretty close to 0.3, and then it will print true. There are a couple other ways to solve this problem, but this is the one that I found. If you have a different solution, make sure to leave it in the comments below. Now let's check out what the solution is to the problem that we introduced at the very beginning of the video. Now let's explore what was wrong in this first problem. The thing that was wrong is really just this remove method, because the remove method doesn't do what you think it does. Most people think the remove method just removes the element that you pass as an argument to it, but that's not what it does, because what if there's more than one element in the list that's the exact same? Instead, the remove method actually removes the index that you give it. So if we give it in the index of 2, it's going to do 0, 1, 2, and it's going to take out the element 4. So you can see how if our list is made up of numbers, this could get a little confusing, because right now the code is going through each of the numbers and removing the index that that number is. It's not actually removing the number. So this code will only work if that number is in its corresponding index. And if that number is in its corresponding index. So instead of working through it by removing all the even numbers, instead, we can use something called list comprehension and remove all the odd numbers. Sounds complicated, but it's pretty simple. List comprehension is basically just creating a list with just one line of code. And the format for it is just output, for loop, if else. Pretty simple. As you can see here, we have our output n, we have our for loop, for n in nums, and we have our if else, if n mod 2 is not equal to 0. And this just means we will only output n if n mod 2, if n is not divisible by 2. So if n is an odd number, then we will output n. And this does the exact same thing as the previous one, but it actually works. So if you liked the video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what's a Python beginner mistake that you just keep making. And if you like this video, you're definitely going to like this one, where we explore how to make a simple text hangman game in Python.